So we begin the 2-year cycle of the Great Conversation with the Epic of Gilgamesh, and it is, I hope you found also really a profoundly moving experience, and it does encapsulate the whole journey he's on over selfhood. And it's remarkable because that kind of microcosmic aspect is reflected in the poem itself, at least in the standard version that we have from the Babylonian period, the old that poet sage Sinleki Unini, who had taken a 1,000-year-old tradition of one would assume oral and also cuneiform transmission of the Gilgamesh legends, and had forged it into this poem that we've got. And certainly one of the things that Sinleki Unini did was to put this frame on the story. So you have the beginning of the poem framed in terms of the city of Uruk, the walls that Gilgamesh is said to have himself erected are part of the glory that we are to contemplate ourselves. And so we have, he had carved his trials on stone tablets, had restored the holy Ayana temple and the massive wall of Uruk, which no city on earth can equal. See how its ramparts gleam like copper in the sun. Climb the stone staircase, more ancient than the mind can imagine. Approach the Ayana temple, sacred to Ishtar, a temple that no king has equaled in size or beauty. Walk on the wall of Uruk, follow its course around the city, inspect its mighty foundations, examine its brickwork, how masterfully it is built, observe the land it encloses, and so on. And that is where we end up at the conclusion of the poem, in the ring structure of the thing, where the voice then at the end we find out is in fact Gilgamesh's, and that the how we got there, where a man is grappling with the agony of mortality. He's expending all of his life force in trying to find out how to not die. And he returns with a wisdom that has to do with a renewed engagement with his own city. That is, the whole process of civilization is exactly the topic of the poem as we've got it. A few things I would like to note. The resonances, I think, for anybody who knows scripture well, that I think you're going to hear them a lot. That'll be useful, especially when we look at Genesis next week. But this opening reminded me right away of Psalm 48, which ends, walk about Zion, go all around it, count its towers, consider well its ramparts, go through its citadels, that you may tell the next generation that this is God. So you'll find those kind of resonances. Now there's a difference, obviously, difference in the religion, difference in how the transcendent is encapsulating the human drama. And that's part of what I would like us to consider here. The main dynamic, of course, of the story has to do with this pair of friends, Gilgamesh and Enkidu. Enkidu being most 2/3, as it were, beast, Gilgamesh being 2/3 God to start with. But when they encounter each other, they balance each other, they limit each other, they bring about a kind of equilibrium, and they humanize each other. That is, brings the tyrannical appetite of Gilgamesh and starts to bring it to a more normal human scale. Enkidu is brought up to the level of civilization, and that dyad, these doppelgangers form, is able to engage in adventures. And what it, of course, dramatically most shows us is the vulnerability that love opens us up to. So in various forms, eros and sexual eros is being how Enkidu is civilized. That is something we should think about. And then how philia, the friendship between Gilgamesh and Enkidu, help the city, Uruk, the primal city, escape the the appetite of its king, who has gone from being a shepherd to being a wolf. All of those things. If you remember how when Saul is being put forward as or when the people of Israel are asking for a king, well, he'll take your young men and so on. Well, the problems of monarchy, they're right here on the surface, and they're being discussed. We remember pairs like David and Jonathan, or obviously Achilles and Patroclus in thinking about Gilgamesh and Enkidu. The other thing to keep in mind is this notion of limits, which we think of as, in terms of the classic Greek mindset of not transcending limits. Well, that concern with hubris and not being hubristic, that's right here. And we want to ask ourselves, how is it that the council of the gods, the city of the gods, as it were, how does it relate to the order of the city, the order in the soul of the king and of his friend, and how it is that our longing to live forever is that something that the gods want us to feel? Is it something that their very existence arouses in us, or is it something beyond the gods that is causing us to push against the human limit? So these are some of the thoughts I think that might be useful for us to have in mind. And I would ask, Emma, could you go ahead and read the questions?
So question 1, how do sex, intimacy, and friendship humanize and civilize? That is, how do they enable social coexistence? Question number 2, the heroic pursuit of glory depends on defying death. Why does Gilgamesh come to fear death? How should we live our lives given the fact that everything we created or accomplished in this world turns to dust? Question number 3, what qualities do the female characters exemplify? And question number 4, how does the city of the gods, as it were, impinge upon the city of the humans? Is power the only rationale for social